everyone. So my name is Jazz Cole, and I am the president and founder of Multilingual and Philanthropic Incorporated. So my story is very much a little interesting. So I grew up with this huge love of fashion. That was my favorite thing in the world. That's what I went to college for. I studied fashion design and apparel technical design. So growing up, I had a very strong interest in learning French. I don't know why, I just love French. And then it wasn't until later on when I started taking French classes and we were talking about dates. And I remember we were talking about like the days, the months, and the years. And I said, my birthday is le 4 juillet, the 14th of July. And my teacher said, oh, how funny, that's actually the French Independence Day, Bastille Day, which basically was a catalyst for the French Revolution back in 1789. And so I was like, wow. So in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, this is like obviously fate, in some way or another. It's like, well, like no wonder I'm so fascinated with the language and the culture. So for me, I don't know, at first it was for superficial reasons. As I mentioned, I was immensely in love with fashion. I went to school for that, and I felt like I wanted to do it in another country because, again, there's this whole glamorized idea of Paris, and that was one of the reasons that kind of brought me closer to French. And as I got older and I started learning more and more languages, because my church actually had a Spanish worship service, because prior to that I was thinking French is all I need to know, English and French, those are the two languages I need to know. And then I went to the Spanish service and I was like, oh, it's fun. Most of my friends are going to go and, it's worship. For me, I'm very close to my faith. So I thought, oh, we might as well just go, because they wanted to reach out to more people in the community that spoke more than just English. So it was just so lively, like the music, and everyone was just speaking Spanish. And at the time, the only Spanish that I knew was what Dora the Explorer taught me, like growing up. And so I remember this sermon, and the pastor was getting emotional about something, and I was like, what? And everyone else is getting emotional and they're really invested in it, and I was thinking, I'm out of the loop here, like what's going on? So after that, I went out to dinner with some of my friends and some of their friends, and they were speaking Spanish because they were like, oh, we need to start speaking Spanish more because my mom taught me Spanish, or I learned because I'm from this particular country, or this is where my roots go back to. And I was thinking, okay, that's it. I need to learn Spanish because it's LA. And not even just that, I had so many experiences where just Spanish was just everywhere, and it was just unavoidable in Los Angeles. So, in Kentucky, everyone practically speaks English, unless you're visiting or you're not really from here. But really and truly, majority of the people I've ever interacted with in Kentucky speak English. And so when I moved to Los Angeles and I just had this whole influx of all these different people from different cultures, I said, that's it. I need to learn another language. I need to learn Spanish. And then, Lord and behold, when I actually started learning Spanish, I met my friend Benjamin. We call him Ben, but Benjamin. He actually was from Mexico. He was on exchange. And I remember I walked in like late one night from a late night church service, and he was in. I said, oh, you're my new roommate. He said, yeah, where are you from? He's like, oh, I'm from Mexico. I was like, oh, this is so perfect, because I actually was literally just thinking to myself, I need to learn Spanish. And all of a sudden, I think that, I'm not trying to force my religion on anyone, but I just have to say that I feel like that was just God right there. He's like, you want to learn Spanish? Boom. A Spanish-speaking roommate. And it was the best experience ever, because we used to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning, and we were just I would ask questions about his culture, and he was already up anyway working on homework, and so we were just we were asking questions. Like in French, we say this a particular way, and I know in Spanish and French are similar, so do you say it the same way or whatnot? And we just had all these conversations. I even asked him what his opinion was on Coco and, the review when it came out. And so I ended up visiting him the following year for Day of the Dead weekend. I was just so compelled to learn it, to literally learn Spanish and really test it. And so after that, I ended up learning, I think I just ended up learning German because a friend of mine at church was also saying that he was from Germany, and I was telling him, oh, that's really awesome, I'm trying to learn a third language. He said, oh yeah, that's really cool, French and Spanish. He's like, well, German's kind of hard. And I said, well, let me see what's this German is about. And so I pretty much learned German out of curiosity. I think that's kind of where it started. It just started with just knowing more people, just being surrounded by it. And then I just ended up learning it and then practicing. And every time I would see him every week, I'd be like, it's like, oh, hello, Marvin. And I would test out new phrases, and he's like, oh, wow. He's like, your pronunciation is spot on. I'm like, that's the first thing everyone always tells me. I may not know and understand everything, but my pronunciation is going to be one thing I will get right. It's something I work on the most. And then from there, after that, I thought, okay, well, if I can learn 2 languages at the same time, why not learn 3? And they were all the languages I know right now are all pretty much Latin based. So going from that, I thought, okay, let's try Italian and Portuguese and Dutch, because they were all similar to languages that I already knew. Italian and Portuguese were similar to French and Spanish, and German was very much similar to English. So it was just easier to just roll into the next one. And that's why I tell people all the time is that when you learn a new language, is that especially European or Latin-based or romantic-based languages, is that they just roll into it just feels like they kind of follow the same grammar rules, or they'll follow similar rules. And they just, sometimes the pronunciation is the same, because I get Spanish and Italian mixed up. Portuguese kind of reminds me of Canadian French, but the Spanish version of it, the Spanish imitation, so to say. And then Dutch, well, I'm kind of glad that I learned Dutch before I learned German, because Dutch, it's a little bit more complicated, but with German, a lot of words kind of overlap. The pronunciation kind of reminds me of a little bit of Spanish, because they do roll their tongues a little bit the same way. And then their accent kind of reminds me a little bit of I don't know, it kind of reminds me of more of a Scandinavian accent, just simply because they're also a little bit further north. I don't know if that has to do with anything, but for the most part, Dutch is very similar. And then I ended up learning Catalan out of curiosity. I literally could not stop, because I kept hearing about Catalan every time, because I was learning Spanish, Castilian Spanish first, because I just wanted to learn that, because all the other languages that I learned were very much European focused. So I was like, okay, let's start learning one form of Spanish before we start learning Mexican Spanish. And because I was used to Mexican Spanish with my roommate, but still with all these different forms, I was like, I just want to learn one form of Spanish, and let's stick with that. And then every time I kept hearing about Spain Spanish, I kept learning about Catalonia and all these other, Catalan, and all these dialects and built off languages. And I thought, well, what's that about? I want to know. The thing is, I think I'm too curious for my own good, because I'm going to tell you right now, it's just that once someone puts a thought in my mind, I'm like, I need to investigate. So I ended up learning a little bit of Catalan through Duolingo, because one of the great things, and I've talked about that in my video about 3 different ways to use Duolingo effectively, I have that linked, is that you can learn languages from other languages, which is really great, because if you're a person where, let's say you're from, I'm just making this up, let's say I'm from China, and I don't want to learn, I want to learn Spanish, but I don't, a lot of resources are from English to Spanish, and it's well, I have to learn English in order to learn Spanish. So they have these resources where you can actually learn a language through your own native language, and not having to worry about having to go through another language just to get to one language. And so I was like, okay, so I'm going to learn this from Spanish to Catalan, so I can really compare the differences, so I can see the cognates and how they differ. I think after Catalan, my goal was not really to be fluent. It was just to be able to understand it and be able to understand how people can understand their languages. Sometimes, even with German, I sometimes realize that because their language just seems so mixed up and all over the place, is that I always sometimes am thinking okay, how do you read that? Because like from first glance, like when I first learned German, I was like, this looks like a bunch of typos to me, because it was just like words and I just didn't understand any of it. So it was just like, oh, this just looks like someone just took a typewriter and was just like all over the place. But then now, because I understand it a little bit more, it's actually being able to put those words together, and it actually makes sense in my mind. And I think that's like the beauty of language, because like when, like for me, like I was talking about with Spanish, is that it was just words and sounds. Like I understood like maybe a couple of words, like little baby words. But like to actually understand full thoughts. I remember I was walking down the street one time, walking up to class, and someone behind me with the baby stroller, the baby was saying, agua, agua. And then she said, ¿Quieres agua? Like, you want water? And I was like, oh my gosh, like to me, like, I mean, for most people, I think that probably is just kind of like, oh, it's just sounds, and it just, you know, it's something that I just hear. It sounds like Spanish, but I don't know it at all. It's just sounds. But to me, it just is a whole other, like, it's like an aha moment. Like when you're like, oh my gosh, wow, like those sounds actually are coherent to me. I remember when I learned, I ended up taking an introduction to Frisian course, because Frisian is the second official language in the Netherlands. And I was thinking, okay, so I don't know, I get really curious about minority languages, because it's like, okay, well, there's different languages within a country that speaks one language, because we know Dutch, but then it's like, okay, well, there's other dialects. One of my friends was telling me, he's like, it's not really worth it to learn Frisian because not many people speak it. And I'm thinking, well, that's not a good reason not to learn it, because I think that even if the goal is not to become fluent, the goal should be to where just learn it, just because if you end up going to those countries, like I was saying with Catalan, my goal is I would love to go to Spain. I would love to visit Barcelona. I would love to visit Valencia and all these like the beautiful parts of Eastern Spain. But the thing is that even if I'm there, I'm still going to encounter Catalan. If I want to be able to understand if there's restaurants, or if there's, you know, like people speaking it in the streets, or, you know, being able to speak it, because to be honest with you, it makes a really big difference. You know, of course they understand Spanish because that's the official language, but I'm thinking it makes a really big difference to know local dialects, because if you get lost and you're in certain areas where people are speaking the language and you're like, because sometimes like even like with like areas that speak, like the official language is Spanish, but like then there's Catalan, sometimes people have a tendency to mix dialects, because I sometimes do that with languages where I'll be thinking one language and like code switching, especially if you're used to speaking two languages every single day. I mean, it's really helpful just to read things and things like that. So minority languages, I think, are just as important as languages that are widely spoken, or the lingua francas, which is known as like the trade languages. So yeah, and then I know 3 words in Arabic. And I was trying to get my neighbor at one point. He was born in Jordan, but he grew up in Kuwait. And so I was trying to get him to, I was like, you should teach me Arabic. I just want to know how to write it, because I don't know if any people are watching this and they speak Arabic natively. I want you to tell me, how do you read it? Because it's so beautiful to like look at. But then like for me as like an outsider, it's like, how do you read it? And then you also write backwards. So for us, it's like, oh, okay, so we're going a different direction, and then, you know, but, you know, I think that's the beauty of learning a different language, is I think that it teaches me how to be humble, because for me as an American, and also a person that speaks English in an English-speaking country, you don't think much about it, especially, you know, those types of people who are always like, oh, this is America, we should speak English. Well, I'm thinking, well, why don't you try to migrate to France? Because I remember when I studied abroad, my listening comprehension skills were not that great. And so when I studied there, I realized, okay, like I have to, like, I can speak and I can communicate what I need to other people, but then when I need a response back, I can't really fully, like, I have to fully process it before I can understand what they're saying. So eventually that comes from practice. And the thing is that when you start to travel and go to other countries and learn what it's like to actually be a foreigner, then you kind of have a sense of like appreciation, or at least a sense of empathy to people that come to America for opportunities. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, it's opened my eyes. And the other thing is, from living in LA, where a lot of people that live there do speak 2 or more languages. So I just think that there's really no reason to not be bilingual. I think it really just changes your life when you know how to communicate in more than just one way. And there's a lot of different benefits, like cognitive benefits for you. So, but yeah, so that's pretty much my story. Even though I don't fully work in the fashion industry right now, I think that was a catalyst for what I do now, because despite, pandemic and, working from home, is that I really, really feel like my main thing that I've learned all the way up to this point is that, business and careers is all about different people. And the thing about language is that we're all the same. We're all human beings, and we're all trying to communicate the same general information. When you're hanging out with your friends and you're talking about, some people at work, your coworker or something like that you really don't like. I'm pretty sure there's people around the world who are also doing the same thing, talking about coworkers they don't like. It's a universal thing. We're all hungry. We're like, hey, I'm hungry. It doesn't matter how you say it. Whether you say, j'ai faim, tengo hambre, doesn't matter what language you say it in. You're still hungry, you need food. And I think that it kind of is one of those things where you just learn that we're all the same, really, as human beings. We're just different. We speak differently. And one of the things I really have wanted to communicate when I started this organization is that it's really important to really emphasize that, because I meet people all the time who say, wow, you speak, at the time when when people started telling me that, wow, you speak 8 languages. Like I learned French, like I took 2 years of French in high school and I don't remember any of it. I hear it all the time, or, oh, I've always wanted to learn a language, but it just seems difficult, or I never have the time. And for me, as a person I make language a part of my daily life. And for me, when I hear that, I'm thinking, okay, how can I make that, a priority for people? Because the thing is, we're missing out on so many opportunities. There are so many amazing friends that I have in my life that I probably wouldn't have had if I didn't know a language, or if I was not in pursuit of learning that language. Originally wanted to create a blog. I was like, okay, so how can I get people to really be motivated to learn a language? Okay, how about a blog? And I realized, okay, that kind of is a little overdone, because I felt like, okay, well, yeah, it's a blog. People will go and read it, and then what? And then I was thinking about writing a book, but then I realized that that's limiting yourself. It's just that you have to really get people to pick up your book and put it in the right hands. And then I felt like, okay, I need to start a movement, because if I don't have, like I said, my thing is that if I'm, trying to, impact people, it goes beyond a book. It goes beyond, writing a blog post. It's that it really has to do with communicating to people. It really has to do with really connecting with people, because that's how I built my network. And I realized is that if I want people to connect with their languages, I have to connect with them. So that's why I make so much, content on, dissecting music, or talking about, talking about different people around the world, or different books that have inspired me. Just sharing that knowledge face to face as much as I can, digitally. And then that was basically what inspired me to really start this organization. And I still have big hopes for what we can do, because like I said, is that the world is beyond our, it amazes me when I meet people who are, older, who will tell me, oh, I've never left the country. And I'm like, what? Like even one of the things that I really wanted to do when I first started this organization is I thought it would be really great to just create scholarship programs, so that people who want to study abroad and they feel like finances is a resource, is a reason why they don't have the ability to travel abroad. I'm like, money should not be an issue. So, because that was the issue for me in high school. It wasn't until I got to college that I first left the country. And again, it was an experience that was worth every penny of. I remember when I was in college and I was saving up money to do this study abroad program. I kid you not, I was willing to eat baby food. Like, it's 99 cents. College students, I'm telling you, college students, every paycheck I would spend no more than like $100 on groceries every month, because I didn't really eat that much. I eat, but I just didn't eat like a whole lot, no more than I need to. And I was like stocking the fridge with like baby food, and I'm like, here, this is what I'm like eating for the, like, that was like my snack. Like I would have like, normal food, but it was just like baby food. That's like the quick snack that I could have in between. I don't need a whole lot of, it's like 99 cents, sometimes a little bit less than that. It's also organic and it's made of real fruit. So it's like, at least I'm not eating like ramen noodles, because I did that in high school. I wasn't going to do that again. It was worth every penny. And my parents were saying, okay, we'll pay for half of it if you come up with half of it. So I worked my butt off for it, and it was the best experience I had in my life. So I mean, I think that I think that language and culture is essential. It's absolutely essential, because we speak languages every single day. You can't turn it off. I can't just stop speaking English right now. Like, I'm speaking a language. It's English, but it's a language. And I think that, with communicating with different people, especially businesses, we have so many businesses that are existing internationally, globally. We have like politics, we have foreign affairs. I mean, people don't really, I think people take it for granted sometimes. I mean, when you look at the fact that where are people on the sidelines when political leaders are talking to each other, they're the ones that are on the sidelines translating and interpreting. And then when you go to UNs or, UN or, international summits, there's always those people in those boxes that are just sitting there with the headsets, and they're the unsung heroes of what allows people to communicate beyond whatever their native language is. They're the ones there saying, okay, like, if you turn your headset to channel 6, you can get it in English, you know what I'm saying? Is that really makes a big difference. So, and especially like if you don't have to use a translator or an interpreter through, communicating with people, and you can do that yourself. I mean, come on. I think it'll change your life. So, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope that my story in some way inspires you to learn a language. And I encourage you to check out our website, languageandpeople.org, to get more resources and to really just find ways to be inspired. So I think that's like the main thing, is when you're inspired, you can pretty much do anything. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.